To finish up the design, we're going to apply some styles to the different layers and also to the background. The first thing we need to do is to open up our Styles panel, and I see it's over here underneath our Adjustments layer. I can drag it off so we can see it. These will allow you to quickly and easily create and save styles within it. Now if you need to change the viewing of it, you can click on the little Options panel, and what we want to select is Large List. So they're all listed off, and we also get the name of each one of them. And these are default styles. You can have other styles that go along with it. Towards the bottom, we also want to add some other styles, and we want to add the Textures style. Now it's going to ask, what do you want to do with it? Do we want to replace or append it? We want to choose Append, and that will add those styles to the very bottom of the area that we're working with. So let's select the rounded rectangle layer, the layer that's on the very bottom. Click on it, then click on the oak style, and that will apply that particular look to that particular layer. Notice in my layers panel, the layer is still white. What they've done is, on top of it, they've applied some color, some gradients, and some patterns that are overlaying these particular layers. To apply a layer style to other layers, let's choose, I'll zoom in so we can see it, Command and the plus sign. I'm going to choose this first image, which is the insert on the left-hand side, the left insert page, so this one. And we're going to add a drop shadow to it. Go to Layer, down to Layer Style, and then choose Drop Shadow. When we select this, notice that the drop shadow is selected, and you've got a variety of other things to pick and choose from. And whenever you select a style, on the right-hand side, these are all the options that go along with it. We'll change the drop shadow. So notice that when I turn it on and off, a little shadow appears around this area, and we can play around with the different things. For instance, we'll set the distance to 10 pixels, the spread to 5 pixels, and the size of it will be 10 pixels as well. So notice that tightens up that drop shadow that's there. Once you're finished, you can say OK. And notice that since I've added the drop shadow to that one, I get the effects underneath it. If you ever click on the eyeball icon, you can turn on and off that effect to see what it's done. If you want to apply this drop shadow to other layers, like this layer and the other center and right effect, hold down the Option key as you click and drag the effect to the other inset. So let's choose the center, and it copies to there. Hold down the Option key and click on Effects and drag it to the right. Now notice I have a drop shadow for all three of those. Zoom out now, and I'm going to select the car layer, and we'll add a drop shadow to this particular layer as well. To add this drop shadow, I'm simply going to double click on the empty space of the layer, and this also brings up my layer styles. Now to add this drop shadow, we're going to click on the name drop shadow, get a little check, and we're going to play around with the options to make it a little bit more prominent. For instance, increasing the opacity, the distance, and also the spread and size of it will make it stand out much more. Additionally, you can change the direction of it by altering the angle. Notice, however, when I change the angle on one, it changes the angle on everything, unless I uncheck Global Light, then I can change the angle just on that particular layer. We'll say OK to this, keep moving on. The other thing we can do to this image is add some filters to it. I'm going to zoom down to the image that's on the right-hand side and select the layer, so that's inset number 3 that I've chosen. Then we'll go to Filter, down to Filter Gallery, and this will open up a variety of different filters that we can apply to the image that we have selected. You can play around with these. The filter we're going to use is under Artistic and choose Cutout, and this will give it kind of a cutout effect. Changing the number of levels will give it a different view of it. Notice how it changes up that. You play around with that to get an adjustment that you like, and when you say OK, Notice now that my layer has a smart filter applied to it, and then my image has also been updated. As with the other effects, you can hold down the Option key, click on the Smart Filters, and apply it to the other insets as well. So this one, inset number 2, now has that filter. Hold down Option, and we'll apply it to inset number 1. That changes up the look and feel of that image. Next, let's liquify our wooden area. I'm going to zoom out. Select your rounded rectangle, or rounded rectangle layer, then go up to Layer, onto Layer Style, and choose Create Layers. Notice now that this will create an individual layer for all the different styles that you have, and they're being clipped inside of your rounded rectangle layer. So we can hold down our Control key and click on the rounded rectangle layer and choose Rasterize Layer. This will turn your vector object into a pixel-aided object. I'm then going to hold down my Shift key and select all 4 of these layers, and we're going to merge the layers. Hold down the Control key, click on it, and at the very top, towards the bottom, we'll choose Merge Layers, and all 4 of those become merged into one single layer. Double click on the name and rename this Wood Cutout. To go into Liquify mode, go back up to Filter, choose Liquify. This will open up the options for liquefying this one. Now Liquify allows you to push and stretch your image as if it was on a bed of liquid. So very quickly you can distort your image very easily. We do want to work in the advanced mode, which is what we're doing already, because you can see a variety of different options are on the side. Under Mask Options, we can choose to mask an area. The Replace Selection area, choose Transparency, and this will select every area that is transparent and keep open all the areas that are not transparent. Now the tool we want to use is this first tool up here. It's called the Forward Warp. Over here on the side you can change the size of your brush, making it much larger or smaller, and also changing up some of the density. But the main thing the book wants you to do is to go through and kind of push and pull things around to give it a more wood-like texture and finish. When you are finished, say OK. And notice now this kind of distorts the image that you're working on. If you want, you can go back in and clean up some of these edges, but I'm going to keep mine like this because I personally think this is an ugly design. Let's put a custom gradient in the background. We'll go over to our toolbox and choose our eyedropper tool. Eyedropper is right here. By default, if we zoom in and click on the blue of this area, it automatically picks up the foreground color as being blue. If we hold down the Option key and click on a gray area down here, it would choose the background as being that color. What we want to do is to create a custom gradient. So I'm going to choose my gradient tool, and at the very top you can see I've got the gradients to choose from, and the first one is a foreground to background gradient. If we click on the gradient picker, it'll open up our gradient slider, and we want to be able to customize the look and feel of this particular gradient. You can do this by clicking on the stops and moving them around. I'm going to move this stop in and also this stop in, and if we want we can add other ones. Let's choose this one. There we go. Drag it into here. Add another stop at the end here. This one will be white, and we'll let this one and the far one over here be white as well. When we're done, we can save our gradient. It'll ask to give it a name. Hit cancel. We want to make it a new gradient. Notice now that new gradient has been created right there. There we go. Now when we save OK, we're going to make a new background. Into the bottom of our layers, creating the new background. By default, it puts the layer above everything, so we're going to click and drag it below the wood grain and double click, call this background. Hit return. Then we're going to use our gradient tool, which I still have selected, and click and drag, and that will fill in the color behind the wood cutout on the background layer. The final thing we'll do is to add a background pattern. Let's make one more layer, double click on the name and call it background pattern. Hit return. Underneath your gradient tool is your paint bucket tool, and at the very top you can choose what kind of fill you want it to be. We're going to change it from foreground to pattern. And in our case, we'll choose our pattern to be a small list. And the pattern that we want to choose is our grayscale paper. So if we scroll down, I don't see it already on there, so we'll go to our patterns. There we are. Choose grayscale paper. And as with the other ones, we want to append it to the list that we have. The pattern we're going to choose is crepe. That one right there. When we click on this particular layer, it will fill in that layer with exactly that pattern. Now in order to see it, we're going to lower the opacity of this layer. So with background pattern selected, look at the very top of your layers panel and find the word opacity, and we're going to drop that down to 15% so that we can see it just a little bit peeking through. When you're finished, I do want you to print this proof, so we'll go to File and Print. We want to make sure our color LaserJet is selected. You get a preview of the area. Also make sure you're only printing one copy and that it's on 8.5 by 11 paper. Say print and you're done.